Greetings, everyone. We wanted to thank you for attending our training on the 23rd of March. For full transparency, Chief Modoc forgot to hit record while we were doing this class the first time, so we are recording it again. And I will turn it over to the team.
All right, thank you, ma'am. This is Tech Sergeant Rossi. I'll be joined today by Mr. Jennings, and Chief Modoc will also be we'll be reviewing a couple slides also. We'll be talking about the regular retirements, also known as AGR TAFMS or 20. Sorry, can you go back one slide? I'm sorry. Yeah, so we're talking about regular retirements, also known as active duty AGR or 20-year TAFMS. In this slideshow, those terms will be used interchangeably, so just keep note of that. So the agenda today, we're going to keep it basic in the beginning, just roles and responsibilities, processing timeframes. We'll get into some common errors on some of the forms. And then later on, we'll get into some of the more advanced programs that we handle here at ARPC. And then we'll end with some frequently asked questions. All right, so roles and responsibilities. I'm going to do this kind of like a timeline. So when a member applies for retirement, they're going to start at the unit level. So the units, Guard and Reserve, they're going to be more of an administrative advisor for the members. So they're going to be answering questions like, is it the right time to retire? Or how does the customer actually apply for retirement? Once the retirement package is done and complete, they're going to submit that to ARPC. Here at ARPC, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to verify eligibility. So see if the member is eligible to retire. We're going to process the application, create the retirement order, and then we're going to submit a package up to DFAS for pay. So what AFPC does in this process is they handle all headquarter level AGRs and stat tour members. So if a member is on continuous orders up to their retirement date and their headquarters assigned, AFPC will process the regular retirement. So processing timeframes. So right now, our goal for our section, regular retirements, is to process the packages or applications 120 days prior to the retirement effective date. Some of the delays that we get for that is, so we do like the applications to come in a minimum 180 days prior to the red. So that would be one of the delays that we expect. And then obviously just some of the application errors, if we're missing information on the application itself, or some of the stuff there's errors on it, then we'd have to reach back out to the member. That can also have delays. And we'll go over the application errors on the next slide. So some of the common application errors that we see here at ARPC, so missing or incomplete 2656s, missing the end of tour order. So we need the last order the member performed the duty on, and this is so we can actually project all the active duty the member served and give them credit for all the points that they need for retirement. So we do need that last set of orders. And then, like I said before, the headquarter AGR and stat tour members. If those members submit an application up to us, we then have to disapprove it. They have to reapply with AFPC, and then that just kind of messes up the time frame for them, especially if they have retirement plans and they want to retire on a specific date. And we'll go over that further in slide 11. And then regular retirement applications must be effective on the first month. We're going to foot stomp this a lot during this presentation. So all regular active duty retirements, they need to be effective on the first of the month. Okay, so common error that we see with those ones is they'll have it on the last day they're on AGR orders, which is usually the 30th or whatever the previous month is. We also see just random days too, but just know that it has to be on the first of the month. And then just a side note, the ARPC form 83 is no longer required for applications. All right, so getting into the 2656, this is a very important document. This is how DFAS establishes the retired pay account. So obviously retiring, getting paid is one of the most important things for members. So making sure that this form is correct and complete is very, very important. And also please note that this form is used for all the branches of service. So some of the sections on the form itself, they're not going to be applicable. So make sure that you're, with your units or the unit and the member are going through the form to its entirety, reading the instructions, making sure that everything is complete on the form itself. Another note is we got notification this week that there is a new March 2022 version of the form. And we are currently working with DFAS to determine a grace period of when that form is going to be used, the old form being phased out and we using the new form. So at this point, just stand by with the new form. If you want some additional information, we do have a MyPERS article, and we also have a YouTube recording of a training that we previously did on 2656, so check that out on YouTube. All right, so getting into the 2656, the form itself, like I said before, section 1, block 4, the retirement transfer date, it needs to be the first of the month. Okay, that's very, very important. Section 2, this pertains to the section where the members are going to get paid, right? So they're checking their savings account information. So one of the biggest areas that we see is the active duty only. That is not going to be marked for Guard and Reserve members. Okay, that's only for Reg Aff. It's different in pay account. So for Guard and Reserve members, keep that box unchecked. Provide checking routing number and checking or savings account routing number and account number. Going into section 10, this is survivor benefit plan. So any option chosen other than full spouse SBP coverage requires the spouse signature, and that's going to be in part 5. The last 2 sections there, block 39 and 40. This is the endorsement for the member. So this is the member signature and the witness signature. Okay, so one thing to note is make sure that the date, the signature is dated is prior to the retirement effective date. And then another thing that we noticed more recently is members are using the PDF form filler. So this signature block needs to be an official signature. So either CAC sign or wet sign. The PDF form filler, you might have seen, it's in a signature block. Sometimes it'll be cursive, sometimes it'll be printed. Well, the problem with that is it's not an official signature, so we cannot use that. So again, just make sure it's electronically or wet sign, please. All right, so next we'll talk about TAFMS and 1405 service dates. For those that aren't familiar with the 1405 service, this is any service for Guard and Reserve members that can't be credited towards their active duty. So for example, if a member had IDTs or UTAs or AFTPs, it's just a kind of an extra credit that Reserve and Guard members get for retired pay. When it comes to calculating the 1405 service or TAFMS, please note that ARPC, we're not going to calculate these for members unless they have 18 years TAFMS. Now, if a member wants to plan for the retirement, there are pay calculators out there, and we did provide a link for a calculator that does not require the 1405 service date. So this is something that they can get a rough estimate of their pay if they go online. Now, when it comes to, we're trying to strive to have the units being able to help these members and calculate this for them. So what the units would need is they would have to go on MilPDS and get a service history serve or the GR both to be able to calculate these dates for them. And to kind of help you out, we're going to have a 1405 service date training, and that's going to be sometime in September of 22. All right, change withdrawal request. So if a member wants to change or withdraw their retirement date, the first thing is that they're going to have to provide strong justification. So if they go into AFI 363203, has to be for one of those 3 reasons. And when it comes to submitting it, so if they decide, they go on there, they find a reason, everything gets approved through their chain. How they're going to actually submit that withdrawal is they're going to go on a VPC. They're going to select withdraw on their pending retirement application. And then, so if it's within, so if it's outside the 30 days prior to the retirement effective date, they're just gonna state that they're gonna make a comment in the application itself. But if it's within the 30 days, so they're gonna retire within the month. At that point, we do require a memorandum from their chain of command. And also to expedite these, since it's so close to their retirement date, we do ask them to call the Force Support Squadron element, so the FSSAE line, just to kind of, so we can, we can make sure that these get expedited before their retirement date. If you would like to know a little bit more about change and withdrawal request, we do also have a MyPERS article. All right, so officer time and grade. I'm going to keep this slide a little bit basic. So just starting with the majors and above. So majors and above must serve satisfactory on active duty for 3 years time and grade. Okay, so there's a lot of confusion between reserve retirements and active duty regular retirements. So in this slide, we're talking about regular retirements. That means that the member has to serve on active duty for 3 years. So they have to have 1,095 days of active duty orders to qualify to retire at that grade. Okay, and and we're going to go a little bit more in depth into the NDAA on the next slide. But the rule did change for the majors. So it used to be lieutenant colonels and above. Now it's majors and above have to have the 3 years active duty. With that new law applied, that brings the captains and below. They just must serve satisfactory on active duty still for 6 months time and grade. And then per AFI 363203, for an ARC member or Guard or Reserve member to qualify to retire as an officer, they have to have 10 years total active federal commissioned service. All right, to kind of get a little bit into the NDAA change, when members reach out to us, the two things they want to know is what it's going to affect and what it's not going to affect. So we'll start with what it's not going to affect. So the 214. So D214, since the member was a major at the last day of active duty, it'll also, the 214 will reflect major. So it's not going to affect the 214. And then also the pay, and that's kind of the most important things for members is making sure that they get paid the maximum amount. So if the member is retiring under the high 3, which should be most members currently, they will get paid the same amount. So if you don't know what a high 3 is, they're going to take the highest 36 months of basic pay. They're going to calculate that, average it out, and they're going to get a lifetime monthly annuity determined on that. So most of these members, they're going to get the same pay. Doesn't matter if it's captain or major, because they're going to calculate that top 36 months. All right. So then we'll go into what will change. So the two things that are going to change are the retirement order is going to reflect captain, and then the retired ID card will reflect captain. So that's the two things that's going to change. Nothing pay affecting. But just make sure that the majors that this might affect, that they know kind of the differences of what will and what won't affect them. And kind of to foot stomp this, we do have an example, and this is based on, so we did an audit of our queue to see what, and we kind of reached out to the majors that this would affect, and this is a case study from that review. So we had a member, they were promoted to major on 1 July of 2019 and requested a retirement date of 1 September 2022. So what I did is I went into the record, I pull all their points, I pull all their orders, right? So all their projected orders out to 1 September 2022. After I did the calculation of all their orders from their retirement date, from their promotion date, the member only had 70 days active duty. Okay, so at that point, even though the member had been a major for 3 years, they did not serve the 3 years active duty. Okay, so they didn't have the 1,095 days needed to retire as a major. They only had 70. Okay, so, and again, just a side note, this does apply to all officers, major and above. So just be aware of that. So the 3 years active duty is kind of the big thing when it comes to the majors. Without further ado, I'm gonna introduce Mr. Jennings for the next slide.
Thank you, Sergeant Rossi. Good morning, everyone. Let's get right into officers desiring active duty retirement and enlisted status. For commissioned officers to be eligible for a regular retirement under Title 10, 9311, the officer must have 20 years of active service and a minimum of 10 years of total active federal commission service to retire as an officer. I'm going to foot stomp this. In order for members to be eligible for a regular retirement, they must have 20 years of active service and a minimum of 10 years total active federal commission service. Without meeting both of those requirements, the officer is ineligible for a regular retirement as an officer, regardless of their total active federal military service. In order for an officer to retire in an enlisted grade, the officer must first apply for separation, and then the officer must be assessed back as enlisted. The process below, as you can see, for converting from officer to enlisted, all members will be submitting a tender of resignation, and that reason must be in accordance with 363209. As you can see, the differences below, the differences between the Guard and the Reserve on that process. Next slide. Next, we will be talking about demotions and highest grade held determinations. For voluntary and involuntary, the reference is 362502 AFI in chapters 11 for the Guard and chapter 9 for the Reserve. You can see below different reasons for voluntary and involuntary. Keep in mind that the highest grade held is determined by the ARPC DPT director for voluntary, and that would include fitness failures, which was delegated to the ARPC DPT director. All other involuntary demotions are determined by SAF. Next, let's talk about the headquarter AGR or stat tour members. If a member is on a headquarter signed AGR tour or a Guard stat tour up to their retirement effective date, AFPC is responsible for processing that retirement. Please note that if a member is going to be returning to a TR or traditional reserve status or drill status guardsman status or unit assigned AGR before the retirement effective date, the member will need to submit their retirement through the VPC dashboard to ARPC for us to process. Guidance on how to determine retirement eligibility for if it's being processed at AFPC can be found at the following link. If you have any questions regarding reserve retirements and members coming off of the AA file, we will cover this in the reserve retirement briefing. Next slide. All right, next we're going to be talking about our SkillBridge applicants. If you don't know, the purpose of SkillBridge is to provide eligible members, both enlisted and officers, opportunities to learn new or improve existing career skills within 180 days before the retirement or separation. The application must be submitted and processed no later than 6 months from the retirement effective date. So members are required to provide justification if submitted less than 6 months. And that's going to have to be written justification. When processing regular retirement applications for SkillBridge, we ask that the FSS commander or superintendent to call the Force Support Squadron Element line in order to expedite these. Unfortunately, due to current system restraints, we don't have a way to ID these SkillBridge applications. Please allow 30 days for us to process these SkillBridge applications once identified. Once we receive and are notified that it's a SkillBridge, we're going to try to get that process within 30 days of receipt or that notification. Keep in mind that the applications can be submitted 12 months prior to the retirement effective date, but we are asking you guys to let your members know to have them apply as soon as possible. And this is going to allow plenty of processing time on everyone's end. All right, let's get into some frequently asked questions. First question, I am not on continuous active duty orders up to my retirement date, but I am still participating. Why is my retirement being delayed? You can always expect delays if you fit into that category. We must wait for all points to post before finalizing any retirement. That way we can account for all time, and that time is used towards the member's pay computation at DFAS. Next question, what do I do if I have a dependent that needs to be added to my order for PCS entitlements? We automatically include dependent information for members retiring from Alaska, Guam, and Hawaii only. We're just noticing that anybody retiring from those areas, we're going to automatically put those dependents on the member's order. All right, we have a member who has a medical code of 31 or 37. What are our next steps? The medical codes need to be removed by the medical unit, or we need an Air Force Form 469 and statement of selection. That can be provided at the time the member applies for retirement, and it can be added later, but we need those documents in order to account for that code 31 or 37. If a member enters the DES system, they must wait for the DES to be finalized before applying for retirement. We can't process that retirement if we see the members going through the DES program. What regular retirement inquiries can our unit call the FSSE line on? And we already addressed this, but skill bridge applications and change dates or withdrawal requests within 30 days from the member's retirement effective date. We need you guys to give us a call so we're aware of these situations. All right, next question. This is who is eligible to convert their active retirement pay to reserve retired pay? If we look at Title 10, USC Section 12741, Chapter 1223, this law authorizes members who meet the stated criteria to convert their active duty retired pay to reserve retired pay, or to choose retired pay in lieu of active duty pay. And the criteria is outlined in the law. But the main criteria for that is the members must complete 2 years or 730 days of SAT reserve service minus any active duty after completing 20 years of total active federal military service. So keep that in mind. That's the qualification, 730 days after reaching 20 total active federal years. That's what the member would need to serve in order to be able to convert their active duty retirement to a reserve retirement under 12741. All right, Chief, I think I'm handing it over to you.
Yes, sir. So it's Chief Modoc again. And actually, from the last point that you just made, Mr. Jennings, people might wonder, why would people do that? So some folks end up getting promoted after that point, and then they complete some reserve service. And so they'd like to get paid at the higher rank. And so that's what we see. And if I'm forgetting anything, y'all jump in, but that's where sometimes that would come into play. That's what we would see.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And when our regular retirement application is transitioning to my FSS, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, when is this going to happen? What's going on with my FSS? And honestly, as soon as we know information, that will be sent to the field. Is this going to happen at some point? That is the plan. But we don't have anything further about this, and we don't know exactly when this is going to happen. So everyone, please stand by, which we should all be used to. Now, recommendations for MPFs. So normally you would not have, ARPC kind of, trying to tell you what you need to be doing out there in terms of how this goes in your MPFs. However, with my background being in the field for the last 26 years, in the 4th Support Squadron, in the CSS, as an MPF superintendent, I wanted to give you some helpful, tips. And I also want to be mindful that I realize some people in the audience, that you're already doing this and you already know this, you already have your own way to manage your program. However, I know that I'm probably going to be speaking to some people that are newer at this and would like some tips on some things to keep in mind for your local management of retirements. So since retirements don't route through the MPF in VPC, we want to encourage you to monitor the VPC reports monthly. Now, I wanted to show you what this looked like, but when my role in VPC, I don't have the retirements button anymore, so I'm just going to explain it. So those of you that have the MPF management role in VPC, I'm not talking to the CSS people with only a CSS role. I'm talking to the MPFs out there that have MPF management. You're going to want to pull the, and this is what I did. I would have my drill status. We'd pull the report, and you pull the open report for new retirements. It will show you the member. It will show you if it's a regular retirement request or a reserve retirement request. It will show you the date of retirement and other information as well. In addition, it will also show you, and I'm going to I'll talk about that in a moment, the change date and withdrawals that have already been mentioned. But I want to touch on a few other things. So when you pull this report, what you want to do is you make some sort of, if you want to make an electronic file, a paper file, anything that you'd like to do. But I'd have my drill status pull a GR both CERF, a record review listing, or just some other CERF and save it in your local file plan. And what this does is not only you'll have information on your members, but if you owe them 214s that you're just not able to get to, or maybe the member didn't, indicate that they were missing something when they were out processing, you can still go into virtual MPF with these source documents and you can create the DD214. The AFI does state that when the member falls off your books, that ARPC is responsible. But me as an MPF superintendent, I know that if I owed a member a document, I'm going to make sure that I take care of my member. And then the closest table and rule, I don't have my file plan anymore because I'm not at the base level anymore, but I looked in AFRIMS and this was the closest table and rule that I remember having on my file plan. So just for a reference for those of you that maybe don't have that reference. Next, monitoring MilPDS. So base level, you absolutely have a responsibility to monitor your end strength. So we want to make sure that you're monitoring MilPDS. So transaction registers, which I'm going to show you on the next slide what both of those look like. But basically what you want to do is you want to monitor that the initial application update was made with the correct retirement effective date. And I'm going to show you that on the next slide. In addition, when I said a few minutes ago, when you're monitoring those open and closed reports, you really want to watch closely to those change date or withdrawal statuses on that report. And you want to make sure that MilPDS also gets updated. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? So if a member goes through this process, they maybe didn't talk to you about it. So you don't know that maybe they changed their mind. So you want to be mindful of that date and just you're a second set of eyes to us at ARPC because we might have indicated, yep, we did everything, we changed it for the member, but maybe the update didn't take, maybe we really missed it, maybe the system was down and we thought it took, so on and so forth. So we want to have you be a second set of eyes for that. And then we've already talked about the field support service element. If there is an issue and you're close to that date, we don't want you to let that retirement commence in MilPDS and have that member fall off your books, because some of you know what I'm talking about. That creates a whole world of other problems. Their CAT card won't work, they'll fly out of the pay system, etc. So make sure you call us and let us know that there is an issue. All right, so I told you I'd show you what it looks like. So some of you that don't know, and I wanted to tell you exactly where to go. It's under the relocation section and then retirements and separations. You query the member and you can look at that screen. And that's what the update looks like. I did a snippet. This is not what the whole screen looks like. I just wanted to show you the top of the data that we really want you to look for. So the TR update is below, the MilPDS is at the top of this screen. So basically when the initial input by the ARPC technician is done in MilPDS, this is the TR that will generate. And all of you should be monitoring your transaction registers. If you're not doing it daily, perhaps your PSM pulls them, weekly or a couple times a week, I'm not sure. But make sure that you're looking through your TRs, whether you're the force management, career development, whoever's doing this program, monitor your TRs. So that's the initial update by the ARPC technician there, approved retirement. You see the application date, and then you see the retirement effective date. Now below that, several days before the retirement effective date, you will see this update on a TR. Now, I know we said the first of the month, so don't pay attention to this particular MilPDS update. I had to grab what I had in my archives. So obviously that would have said the first for an AGR or regular retirement. But several days before the retirement effective date, you will start to see this entry like you see below on that last name Carlson. Separation will be confirmed on. You will see that I believe it's approximately 7 days before the effective date. You will start to see this on the transaction register. So if you remember from your report and you had this individual, maybe they had canceled their retirement, but you're still seeing separation will be confirmed on. That is a red flag and we need you to call us on the FSSE line, okay? Now, I had a few more things that I wanted to share. We talked about open and closed reports already. ETS dates. you really need to be mindful in monitoring ETS dates. Sometimes there's, a situation where a member needs more time, and we want to make sure that, whatever factors come up, that you guys help the member get to where they need to be. I don't want to go into detail, but just make sure you're monitoring ETS dates as well. Next, the next point I wanted to make, we've already touched on 1405 service date. So all of you that are helping your members work through the regular retirement process, we want to say thank you. Trust me, I understand that it can be a difficult job, especially since you all are not trained SBP counselors. So for the 1405 service date, that is the very first thing that the member wants to check and make sure is updated. If it's not, the member wants to make sure that they get that that requested. And again, if they're a headquarters stat tour or a headquarters AGR, that request is going to go to AFPC for that to be calculated. If you're not one of those categories, your request is going to come to ARPC for that 1405 service date to be calculated. That's the first thing that needs to be done. Actually, let me back up. For the guard, the AGR curtailment of their order would happen as well. So you kind of be doing that maybe right around the same time. Maybe you start your AGR curtailment before that, okay? Next, once the 1405 is calculated, if it wasn't already, then the member will make their appointment with the SBP counselor. Now, we've talked about SBP counselors at length when we've done our casualty trainings that are also on YouTube, and you can review those trainings as well if you haven't already. The SBP counselors, we understand some of you are at remote locations and you don't have an active duty base that you're co-located on. So the expectation is that those FSSs have already made those relationships with the nearest RegAF base, or maybe it's an Army base, okay? When I was stationed in Michigan at the 127th Wing, we used Wright-Patterson, which was 4 hours away. And those folks were very helpful with our members, okay? So then they would make their SBP appointment, and those counselors helped them do the DD form 2656. So that's how that 2656 gets done. And maybe you're just a second set of eyes for the member, just to make sure some of those common errors that we've already talked about are good to go, okay? Now for our reserve AGRs, we are working with DPA to just, perhaps work on a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a checklist, but some sort of document that kind of explains things a little more clearly for all of you on the that are headquarter, reserve AGRs. I'm definitely a guardsman, so I understand the state HRO and how the HR remotes work very closely. And sometimes with the reserve AGRs, it's just a little bit different process on how those orders get curtailed. Okay. And then for additional references, here's a slide that has all the different law, regulation, policy, some of our articles that are on MyPurse, and those recordings that we had already referenced. In addition, the slides from that 2656 training that we already did, we did that one in January. I sent that to all the AFRIC and the Guard FSS commanders and superintendents on the 19th of January. So please, if you don't have those, ask your superintendent or FSS commander. Is there anything that I missed, team?
I don't think so, ma'am. You're good.
All right, I'm going to stop this recording.